We have a closed loop photo sensor right there, and we've got a light it's controlling right there. We have a task surface which is lying just outside of the secondary side lit zone. That would make this a voluntary system in the state of California. The lights are fairly warmed up. They're 32 watt lamps. We've set this system up for automatic lumen maintenance and not for daylighting. We're in a unique position where I can bring lighting into here in a natural manner by raising a garage door that's behind the camera. I'm reading 17.5 to 18 foot candles with the sensor seeing the contribution of its own lighting. We're going to do a daylight test. We're going to assume that we've got documentation or that we simply don't know whether this system has been tuned down on the top end using the closed loop photo sensor. So our first check is to take this exciting and scientific toilet plunger and cover the closed loop sensor. Then you have to wait. That's important, and see if the system turns up the lights. Well, I will do this and record it. I will step over to the closed loop photo sensor and simply cover it, and then wait to see the lights are coming up already. So while I prattle on, we're at 19, 19.3. This should go quite high because these lamps are tuned down quite far. I'm at 20. I'll tell you what, 21. I'll get back to you on this so you don't have to waste your time sitting and listening to me. Well, that took forever, which was probably about a minute and a half, to reach an output of 26 foot candles, which we're going to call our full output. So we know that this system has been tuned down using the photo sensor, because covering the photo sensor raised us from our true no daylight reference illuminance of about 17.5 to 18 to 26 foot candles. So now we're going to do a partial daylight test, and we're going to need to introduce our partial daylight level. So I can see that the sensor is active and turning down the lighting. I can go ahead and insert. I'm going to make it about 75% of our reference. So our reference was 18, and I multiply it by 0.75, and that gives me about 13.5 foot candles of daylight that I want to introduce to the space. So I'm going to take out the controlled lighting and open the garage door and shoot for about 13.5 on this light meter, and then we'll let the system settle out and see what our combined illumination is. And I can tell you just from looking at this lamp, which we did not set up for daylighting in the first place, that we are going to be over dimmed. That's my guess, because it certainly looks that way when I play around here in the garage. So controlled lighting off. We have about 1/2 foot candle under dark conditions here. I know you see light coming in from a window, but it is 0.4 on the meter, which shows you that light coming in from the side is not read well by these meters. They want to read horizontal foot candles coming down, which tells you you're going to need to bring a lot of light in horizontally to get your partial daylight level, and also that 0.5 foot candles is pretty bright, but not so bright that you can't proceed. Okay, I have the garage door raised about halfway. I'm fluctuating between 13.2, 14.2. I'm going to call this 13.5. Using real daylight is always troublesome because your reading will fluctuate. I'm going to bring the controlled lighting back on, and we're going to wait to see how the system fills in. We want to be above our reference of 17.5 to 18, but below 150% of that. So somewhere in that range is what we're shooting for. Let's find out what happens. I suspect these will dim down too far because this system was not set up properly. We also have a lot of glare. Remember, we set this up for institutional tuning using Automatic Lumen Maintenance. We didn't go through all the care and time required to set it up as an actual daylighting system. Well, lo and behold, I'm reading about 13.5 to 14.5 on this meter. So I'm going to put down that my part day combined is 14 foot candles. I seriously think these lights are under-dimmed, or over-dimmed, but we're going to double check our daylight level. I've got a combined of between 14 and 15, it's fluctuating. When I take off the control lighting, I've got about 14. Yeah, the light should not be turned down this far. Maybe what we ought to do is attempt to set it up using real daylight, which is something that's a luxury for a commissioning person. We know we're going to meet our power reduction on this, so let's just go ahead and recalibrate this system as best we can using actual daylight. Okay, so we're going to set this closed loop, continuously dimmed system up for daylighting now. As previously mentioned, this would be a voluntary system because the secondary daylit zone ends right about here. So what we're going to do under true no daylight conditions, which in this case is about half a foot candle, is I'm going to take the calibrator and tell it I'm going to give it a night setting. Now, at this point, the lights, because I hit night, this is no longer responding and I can move it up and down as I please. We had a full output of 26 foot candles. That should not have changed. And I can get it either of two ways. By covering the closed loop sensor with our scientific toilet plunger, right, while the system's active. That should drive it up to full output, unless you've been told otherwise. Or opening the 0 to 10 volt control line will work just as well. So I'm going to bring the lighting up a tad and give it a different reference. And I'm going to shoot for exactly 20. It's 20.4. That's exactly 20. 20.3. Good enough. I'm going to hold down the night button until I get my two long flashes. And I have now set in the no daylight level in the sensor. So I'm going to kill the electric lighting, and I am going to open the garage door and shoot for a partial of about 15 at this meter, and then we'll do our partial daylight setting. We're at about 15, 16, 17. It's fluctuating. We want, according to the manufacturer, to be between 65% and 90% of our no daylight setting that we set, which was 20. So we're there, 14, 15, 16. We're using real light with lots of glare, so it's fluctuating about. So I'm now going to tell the system I'm calibrating the daylight level. Let's bring it on down. 28, 27, 26, 25, 24, 23. We want our partial to be higher than our reference of 20. And I'm going to use 23. And we're there. So now I hold down my daylight button until I get my two long flashes from the sensor. And I have now set in both the no daylight level and the partial daylight level. And when I hit this auto button, our calibration is complete. Now, your numbers are going to shift a little. It just does that. I'm reading about 22, 21, 22, but it's above our reference. So now we're just going to repeat the acceptance testing on this. Okay, garage door closed. We're at 10 and climbing. All right, our reference is about 21, which is 1 foot candle higher than we were shooting for. Rather than covering the sensor with a toilet plunger, I'm going to take this ladder and disconnect the 0 to 10 volt control line to get our full output. Voila! My full output is 25. We'll call it 25. Very close to the 26 that we read in the first place. So that's our full output, and that's where we take our power reduction from. So I've got 26, and you know what, that reference is fluctuating some. I will call the reference 20. It is fluctuating some. Full output 25. Now I want a partial daylight of about 15 inserted into this space to see how our partial daylight combined works. Okay, I'm there. I'm reading 14.7, 15.2. Real daylight's a little hard to work with. It fluctuates. I'm going to turn the electric lighting back on. I am up at 34, 32, 30, 28. Looks like this is going to be a fairly rapid response. So let's talk for a minute about using real daylight. Behind the camera, where you cannot see it, sunlight is coming in and hitting the floor of this garage and producing a lot of glare. Glare is a bad thing, but it's something you just have to live with. Directly behind the camera is, by the way, south. It is the end of November. We are very close to the winter solstice, at which point the sunlight coming into the south side of this garage is going to produce the largest direct sunlight area behind the camera, and therefore produce the most glare. I'm reading, get out of the way here, 24, 23.5, 22, 23, we'll call it 23.5 for our partial daylight combined, and 23.5, and we put in approximately 15, which means that these lights are now filling in approximately 8 foot candles at this point. And so now what we're going to do is we are going to once again kill the electric lighting and open the garage door all the way up to see if we can get a full daylight level. Now your full daylight level can be quite high. You're allowed to go over 150% for testing. Currently, but you must be higher than the reference illuminance. I'm reading about 22.8, 23. I call it about 22.5, but it's higher than our reference. So let's see if that's enough daylight to bring this controlled lighting down. Now, I plugged the lighting back in. I hit 33, 30, 26, and down it goes. These lamps should dim down pretty much fully. So our full daylight was approximately 23, and our full daylight combined is still settling down. It seems to have stuck at about 26. Alright, so that's combined what remains of the electric lighting and the daylight we're bringing in, but because we're using actual daylight, we need to double check the daylight level when we're sure we've taken our proper full daylight combined, which is 26. To pull the lighting, I dropped 23. That's where we started. That gives me 3 foot candles of electric lighting remaining in the room under a full daylight condition, and that is an entire daylighting test on this system, and it now meets specs. So, good. Our partial was not too low. We've got all the power reduction in the world, and we're not tuned down by more than 30% on the top end, only from 25 to 20, so that's 20%. So this is a passing system, and perhaps we'll analyze these numbers and look at the form in another post.